Network. This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. As we move towards Thanksgiving and the rest of the end-of-the-year holiday season, political issues and concerns continue to bubble, sometimes just under the surface, about the future of democracy. One of those concerned about that is outgoing Nashville State Representative Mike Stewart. He's our guest this week on Inside Politics. Mike, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
The 2022 midterm elections were peaceful. They seemed to lack a lot of the intense drama we saw 2 years earlier in 2020. Why do you remain concerned about the future of democracy? It looks like it worked pretty well this time.
You know, it did, and we should be really thankful for that. A lot of people who betrayed our democratic system lost, and we had some big victories like the Michigan legislature, which will protect that state from attacks on democracy. But I do think people need to realize when President Trump led an effort to essentially illegitimately take power, he was operating off a playbook that had been written long before he started to use it. And there are people, as has been reported in the Heritage Foundation and in other organizations, who've been working for years to develop these ideas that you could overturn an election by disregarding the will of the people. And I think those people are still at work, and we need to still be vigilant.
You were so discouraged about this whole situation, at least earlier this year, that you decided not to seek a fifth term in the legislature. Did you also just quit because you got discouraged and beat down after the Democrats had been a super minority in the Tennessee legislature for a long time? Over a decade now, that had to have taken a toll.
You know, the funny thing is many people ask me that, but I always tell people, even though I lost a lot of votes, I never had a bad day in the legislature. You know, I believe in democracy. I genuinely enjoyed about every minute that I was in the legislature, and I absolutely would have enjoyed having another term, but I did think it was time to turn to some new work. So I was not at all discouraged. You know, shoot, I've lost a lot of votes since the moment I got there, but you know, that's part of the system. 2022 was also a redistricting year here in Tennessee. They didn't mess with your district enough to make you want to quit? Not at all. I mean, it was funny. In 2010, my district was totally transformed, not according to my desires. In 2020, honestly, the redistricting this last year did not significantly change the makeup of my district. It was just a little bit of tinkering. That may be because I didn't tell anybody I was going to step out until the redistricting plans were done, because I didn't want to give the Republicans that additional knowledge. On this issue about democracy be under threat, what did you do about that personally during the 2022 election? Well, I will say, first of all, not enough, but I did a few things. I paid for some research to help the folks that were working on the Michigan legislative elections, which I hope was helpful. I went and worked at a very low level to try to get Liz Cheney elected, to try to make both because I thought it was important and to make the point. And that one didn't work. It didn't work, but I'm happy I did it and participated in other ways. And what I'm doing right now is I will be increasingly doing everything I can to demand that Attorney General Garland and the Justice Department carry out their duty to arrest or to prosecute not just people who wandered around the Capitol wearing horns, but high-level people with education and credentials. We have not seen people like Rudy Giuliani face a jury, and they need to. The Democrats had a lot of good fortune, better than they thought in this election. Did the Republican wave not materialize because of the threat to democracy was perceived coming primarily from their party, or was it because of the Dobbs decision on abortion? And there seem to be both those things going on. Which one do you see was the greater impact? I think the polls I've seen, it's the Dobbs decision. I mean, I think that was the big game changer. That turned out to be a hugely influential event. I do think there's a lot of talk about protecting democracy, and I think that Liz Cheney and the members of Congress that had the hearings were very influential, but I do think the abortion issue was the real game changer. On the federal level, several of President Trump's candidates, particularly in the U.S. Senate, were defeated. Mission accomplished on the democracy issue there? Absolutely. I mean, it's very important that people were repudiated. There's no question, and we had situations, I mentioned the Michigan legislature, by flipping the Michigan legislature blue, because right now there aren't any Democrats that are essentially not committed to our democracy. That's not true for the Republican Party. If if a legislature is controlled by Democrats, you really will never have a threat to democracy in that state. So that's been a real step forward.
Was it more important that election deniers, and there were many of them on the ballots, were defeated also down in the state elections? In state elections, the state is the one that really decides how the elections are run, and many of those people might have changed that way the elections are run had they won the election.
It's absolutely critical, absolutely. I mean, election deniers, in my view, have disqualified themselves from serving in public office. You know, I serve with lots of Republicans who disagree with me on every issue, but they absolutely are entitled to serve. I disagree with Governor Lee on lots of things, but he won his election and he deserves to lead the state because of that. That's not true for election deniers. They are stepping outside of the American system, and it's critical that they be beaten at every level from city council to governor.
Kari Lake is the Republican nominee for governor in Arizona. She lost her race very narrowly.
Thank goodness.
She is still sort of raising questions about not only about the 2020 election, but the 2020 election, also about 2022, about her election. She thinks there was something wrong. She doesn't offer any evidence of that. But she got hundreds of thousands of votes in that state. Is it a concern that these candidates get beat, but there's still an awful lot of people who still believe in what they espouse?
Well, and it shouldn't be surprising anyone when you have someone like President Trump with such a megaphone making these outlandish claims. It's not surprising that people who grew up in the United States of America and are accustomed to our leaders speaking the truth, that they can be deceived. You know, President Trump, really, we just need to recognize President Trump was totally disqualified himself as a leader, not because of his policies, which I don't agree with, but because he rejected the democratic system. And people that followed him and went with his example, for example, Senator Blackburn, Senator Hagerty, people who deny elections are not fit to serve.
Mike Stewart's our guest. He's an outgoing state representative here in Nashville. He's working now on threats to democracy. He still sees coming in the future. I'd like to continue our conversation with Mike after this break.
This is a